criminalization of black and brown communities that the Trump administration has pursued through its midnight immigration raids, separation of U.S. children from their families, the racist, vitriolic language, and artificial manufacture of undocumented immigrants by repealing both DACA and TPS. Now, responding to this injustice, the coalition you see behind me of community members, CASA members, organizations, demanded action locally right here in Montgomery County. And thanks to those efforts, this year, the Montgomery County Council introduced legislation that would appropriate some dedicated funding towards legal representation of individuals in these circumstances. And these are folks, again, that are unjustly targeted by the Trump administration's enforcement efforts. However, Mr. McCarthy has developed a list of exclusions that would prohibit legal representation to all but a few selected eligible individuals, a real fraction of the total that's eligible. According to this proposal, those prohibited access to an attorney include those county residents having such minor traffic offenses, minor substance abuse offenses, and onwards. Now, should the council adopt these provisions, the program in essence would be gutted and rendered pointless. This effectively enables the Trump administration's destructive policies. Now, according to the state attorney's own website, his office's mission is to seek to serve the public interest through fair and honest administration of justice, as well as to address inequality and promote fairness in the criminal justice system. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, whether this is a reflection of that mission.
No!
John McCarthy's recent actions run counter to these principles, and this coalition, our membership, demand that he reverse his course immediately, along with the county council, and that he immediately supports the expansion of legal representation for our county representatives. So today, we have a distinguished list of experts in this field that would want to talk to you about the importance of these efforts and the damage that John McCarthy has caused and inflicted upon our community.
We do. We think you're a traitor.
First up, we have Gabriella Caro, who's been an integral part of the movement to create this legal front. Gabriella, please.
Traitor.
My name is Gabriella Caro, and I'm an attorney with the University of Maryland School of Law Immigration Clinic. I have worked closely with the CAIR Coalition and the County Council in developing the special appropriation that has been undermined by State's Attorney John McCarthy. Montgomery County families are at risk of being torn apart by an administration that has proven that its anti-immigrant rhetoric is as good as its word. The special appropriation aims to protect these members of the community by providing attorneys to represent their immigrant neighbors in immigration court. A local study by CPD showed that immigrants in deportation proceedings represented by counsel are 4 times more likely to win their immigration case than those who are unrepresented. The difference between staying in the United States with your family and permanent banishment is as simple as this: a lawyer. To be clear, a lawyer does not guarantee success in immigration court, but a lawyer can guarantee due process and access to justice. And as 2 immigration judges with combined 50 years of experience explained to the Montgomery County Council, no right is more important or more imperiled in the immigration system right now than due process. And the only way to guarantee due process is by providing competent legal counsel, regardless of their criminal history or immigration status.
Not using my money.
For example,
Not using my money.
For example, many immigrants come here legally, or as some call it, the right way. But for whatever reason, they make a mistake and end up with a criminal conviction. These immigrants may have a defense against deportation, but the immigration laws are so complex. Immigrants would never know it without the advice of counsel, and would never be able to argue it in their own defense without the assistance of counsel. The Montgomery County Council sought to provide due process and access to justice to its immigrant residents. But conversations got waylaid by the state's attorney, John McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy, a state's attorney with no experience of immigration law or practice, convinced the council that he, not an immigration judge, should determine which immigrants should have access to justice and which immigrants should not. He created a long list of criminal convictions, far longer than Prince George's County or Baltimore City had, and insisted that anyone with such a conviction, even though they've already served their sentence, should be barred from a county-funded attorney. We met multiple times with Mr. McCarthy and members of his office and the council in an attempt to be responsive to his concerns. Mr. McCarthy was intractable and dogged in his determination to prevent certain members of the immigration community from due process. Mr. McCarthy prevailed. Were we to accept the special appropriation in its current incarnation, so many deserving people with defenses against deportation would be excluded from representation, that the program itself would have no meaning. Mr. McCarthy left the CAIR Coalition with no choice but to withdraw and to seek other ways to guarantee access to justice to Montgomery County's imperiled immigrant community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. And now we'd like to also have you speak to another key member of this coalition to represent communities of faith. We ask Reverend Charles Booker from the Sanctuary Congregation Network to please come forward.
My name is the Reverend Charles Booker. I'm the longtime pastor of Bethesda Presbyterian Church, the church that named the town of Bethesda. And I'm here representing the Montgomery County cluster of Sanctuary DMV. Sanctuary DMV is a multi-faith coalition of congregations and faith leaders in Metro DC who have joined together in support of our immigrant sisters and brothers. I am here today for one reason: to say that as people of faith, we cannot stand by and watch families being torn asunder due to lack of legal counsel. As guardians of public conscience, our witness has everything to do with the justice responses of our institutions. And here, justice is currently being denied. Our faith communities do not make moral judgments distinguishing who is worthy of humane treatment. Neither is this the county council's role with due process. The exclusions list State's Attorney McCarthy has proposed, and the council has accepted, makes moral judgments of who is worthy and who is not. And through these exclusions, they are washing their hands. Washing their hands of the cost to families, washing their hands of the trauma and fear, especially their children experience, especially the children. Washing their hands of the reverberating impact of fear and anxiety for communities across our county. Whatever happened to liberty and justice for all? Their list of exclusions perpetrates discrimination and unfair treatment. For example, immigrants found guilty of crimes and who have served their sentences are being tried again. And now they are being threatened with a second round of punishment. The tearing apart of their families for past crimes, many of them simply misdemeanors. We are not to deny legal counsel to anyone. Due to the absence of legal counsel, the disappearing of family members by ICE, what we commonly hear today, is sadly similar to what we commonly hear in countries with little or no democratic heritage. Also, decades of research show that our justice system nationwide treats people of color and immigrants unfairly. They face undeniable structural barriers in every facet of our society. As with any of us, some may stumble, but the moral imperative for humane treatment is universal. As people of faith, we not only stand for love, we stand for justice. We stand with our immigrant sisters and brothers. And I conclude with these timely words from the prophet Isaiah. Woe unto those who legislate evil, who rob the poor of their rights, and who make women and children their prey. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And now I'd like to introduce an important leader in this movement, here in Montgomery County, representing the Montgomery County Defense Coalition, Joanna Silver, please.
My name is Joanna Silver, and I'm here on behalf of the Montgomery County Deportation Defense Coalition. Our coalition includes 10 different Montgomery County community activist organizations that are comprised of many hundreds of individuals, taxpayers and homeowners, people whose children attend our public schools and drive on our roads and use our public transit systems, people who have a vested interest in the economic well-being of this country, of this county. We represent individuals from across the county, from Tacoma Park and Silver Spring to Bethesda, Rockville, Kensington, Gaithersburg, and Potomac. The coalition represents secular political organizations and religious congregations. Our members are motivated by the fundamental belief that if someone from our community is going to be detained and subject to permanent separation from their family through deportation, they should have the assistance of an attorney, regardless of their ability to pay. And our members share the fundamental belief that this assistance should extend to all of our community members who are detained and facing deportation. We reject the notion that some individuals are more worthy of due process and humane treatment than others. We are outraged that John McCarthy, our county's lead prosecutor, an elected official who is not a member of the county council and has no expertise in immigration law, has declared by fiat his requirements. His insertion into this process furthers the toxic narrative perpetuated by our president of immigrants as bad, undesirable, and irredeemable people. Of course, we know that some undocumented and documented immigrants commit crimes, and so do many United States citizens. Mr. McCarthy can and should use his role as the state's attorney to prosecute all of these people. That is his job. His job is not to deny due process to individuals in immigration court. We are gravely disappointed in our council members for their capitulation to Mr. McCarthy's demands and their disregard of the advice of immigration experts, including former immigration judges and attorneys who have argued against criminal exclusions. Our coalition hopes that our next council will have the wisdom and courage to fund a viable deportation defense program to protect our county's most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a colleague of ours who's leading this effort not only here in Montgomery County, but throughout the region to ensure that our immigrant families are protected and are subject to due process. Please, Jose Magana Salgado, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Magana Salgado. I'm here as a DACA recipient. I'm here as a Maryland barred lawyer on behalf of CASA to encourage the state's attorney to come back to the negotiating table and stop opposing access to counsel. Under the state's attorney's proposal, nearly 3/4 of all eligible Maryland residents, including legal immigrants, would be excluded from representation. This includes victims of crime, people fleeing abuse, people escaping from countries where they are being persecuted. That framework simply doesn't reflect what other jurisdictions are doing across the country. In Los Angeles, they specifically made it so that victims of crime and people with eligible forms of humanitarian relief like asylees would be able to get representation regardless of their criminal history. New York City, through a combination of public and private funding, provides representation to 100% of all detained non-citizens in New York. In Prince George's County, they have a due process exclusion list so small that virtually no one is excluded from the list. Vera's Safe City Initiative, which partners with over a dozen jurisdictions across the United States to provide similar universal representation programs, does not ask or require local jurisdictions to exclude people based on their criminal history. These considerations are political and not policy in nature. This is essentially a public defender program. And it would be ridiculous if we had a public defender program in our criminal justice system that excluded the representation of individuals with politically unpopular convictions or previous contacts with the criminal justice system. Legal service providers like CAIR Coalition have continually negotiated in good faith. They agreed to a list of exclusions only to have that list added to over and over again, and have critical forms of relief like asylum be excluded from representation. The state's attorney's office has moved the goalposts so much that the goalposts are no longer in the stadium. We are asking the state's attorney to stop blocking access to counsel, and that the city council step up and ensure that Montgomery County protects its residents, keeps families together, and ensures justice and liberty for all.
Thank you so much, Jose. I want to introduce a key ally of this movement as well, a key citizen group that's been advocating for this for a very long time. The Tacoma Park Mobilization, and representing TPM is Ms. Katie Stout.
I'm Katie Stout, representing Tacoma Park Mobilization, a grassroots organization with over 1,800 members, residents from Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, and the vicinity. Our members are very distressed that the Montgomery County Council has been unduly influenced by the state's attorney to exclude certain neighbors from a fund meant to protect the rights of those in detention. We expected our council members to prioritize community voices and defend marginalized and vulnerable neighbors. We also would have thought that the council and state's attorney would demonstrate a stronger belief in the merits of legal counsel. The reason we want those in detention to have a lawyer is very simple. A lawyer can help a judge better understand the details of an individual's case. The lawyer can then help protect that person from deportation if there are grounds for relief. Circumstances, such as the fact that the immigrant is contributing economically to our society, that they have close family ties, that they don't pose a danger to the community, that they're building a good life, can all be better considered when a lawyer is able to make the case to an immigration judge. And even when there are no grounds for relief, a lawyer can at least protect a person's rights while detained. The ACLU has found that there are unconstitutionally low levels of medical and mental health care provided to those in immigration detention that have, I quote, left people fighting for their lives. Complaints of sexual abuse in detention, including in Maryland, where many of our county residents are detained, have also been documented. Why is the state's attorney against protecting Montgomery County residents from these abuses? We weren't surprised when the Trump administration proposed excluding immigration detainees from coverage under the Prison Rape Elimination Act. But we're definitely surprised when our own Montgomery County state's attorney, with tacit acceptance from our county council, goes along with those same ideas. In addition to being mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, immigrants are net economic contributors. They're consumers, breadwinners who support their family, renters, homeowners, their employers and employees, they're taxpayers, even those who are not documented, and they can't do any of this when they're detained. They become a net cost only while in detention. We're here to support CASA, CAIR, and the Deportation Defense Coalition to say enough is enough. While we've been actively fighting the Trump administration's racism and hatred, we're disappointed that we have to fight exclusion at the county level too.
Finally, I wanted to bring up our last speaker, and when you know the ACLU is on your side, you know you're on the right side. I want to introduce Nik Steiner of ACLU Maryland.
Good afternoon. My name's Nik Steiner. I'm with the American Civil Liberties Union of Maryland. Our Constitution requires that in criminal court, everyone's guaranteed a lawyer, even if you can't afford to pay for one. It doesn't matter what crimes you're charged with, you're always guaranteed a lawyer. In the immigration system, obviously this protection doesn't exist, even though it should, which is why Montgomery County stepped up with a bill that would have allowed immigrants in detention the opportunity to be represented by a lawyer. The problem is that in immigration court, the consequences can be as severe as the consequences in criminal court, and without the help of an immigration lawyer, the chances of actually getting to stay here are slim. Our state's attorney thinks that even if individuals in detention who risk being tortured upon return, they should still be detained and deported after representing themselves in Baltimore's immigration court. Only 7% of the people in this scenario actually win their case. in Baltimore's criminal court, about 93% of those cases end up in plea deals, and oftentimes those cases are pled out because the individual can't stand another day in jail. However, in every one of those cases, the individual had a right to a lawyer, and a lawyer that the state would provide them. It would be unjust, unconstitutional, and a mockery of due process if it were otherwise. The very basic notion of being represented by a lawyer should be something everyone is entitled to, and should be a given in the immigration system, but here we are. Mind you, these are individuals who have already served their sentences and are facing more consequences in the immigration system. This fund is sorely needed everywhere, and the state's attorney should not be making it an impossibility in a county as diverse as Montgomery County. So we call on the county council and the state's attorney to reverse their positions on this fund and support an unconditional deportation fund. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Actually, we wanted to provide you an opportunity to hear directly from the people that are going to be most impacted by these latest efforts from John McCarthy. And with us today, we have Claudia Sacramento from CAIR. Please, Claudia.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Bueno, yo vengo a hablar sobre la importancia de estos fondos para que haya abogados gratuitos para todas las personas que están siendo víctimas porque no han cometido ningún delito.
I come to speak on behalf of this legal fund so that you know that we support an effort to make sure that innocent people are provided legal defense.
La comunidad ahorita tiene miedo y necesitamos esta gran ayuda. Por favor, ayúdennos con estos fondos. Ayúdennos para que tengamos abogados gratuitos para todas esas personas.
The community is right now in fear, and this fund is very, very important to address the concerns of our community. We ask that you help us preserve this fund. Please help us preserve this fund.
Por favor, ayúdennos.
Thank you. Please help. So finally, first we wanted to thank you all for being here. We appreciate your presence to hear about this important topic. Although we're here to express our outrage at the recent efforts by John McCarthy to sabotage this important legal fund, we're confident of ultimate victory. And whether we get it tomorrow, whether we get it the next day, we are confident that this Access to Justice initiative will bring our community the relief that they need, and that we have a responsible county council, whether it's now or whether it's at the end of this electoral cycle, that will do the right thing. So I want to thank you for your time. I wanted to thank everybody here. Can we do it? Yeah!